Hey, this is Jamie from Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to revisit a video that I made a couple years ago now, but I've played a lot of other two-player games since then. So I'm going to revisit my top 10 list for my top 10 favorite two-player only games, or games that are primarily played at two players in general. I have a separate list about multiplayer games that I also enjoy playing specifically at two players, but this is about two-player specific games. And there are a lot of games in this category, so let me jump right, rather than listing every game in the two-player category, I'll jump right to my honorable mentions, then my top honorable mentions, and then my top 10 list. And I'll talk more in detail about the games on the top 10 list. So under honorable mentions, games that I would definitely gladly play again and that I enjoy for a variety of reasons, I have Unmatched, Fields of Arle, A Few Acres of Snow, The Rival Networks, Skulk Hollow, Fox in the Forest Duet, Raptor, and Stronghold. Then I have my top honorable mentions, because there are a lot of two-player games that I enjoy quite a bit. And my top honorable mentions are Star Wars Rebellion, Agricola, All Creatures Great and Small, Chess, Flesh and Blood, Blitzkrieg, Star Realms, Fog of Love, Keyforge, Ukiyo, Air, Land, and Sea, Codenames Duet, Fox in the Forest, and Royal Visit and Dice Throne. Let me jump right into my top 10 here. And there are a couple on here that might just make it, and might have made it because I played them very recently, including one that I just played today for the first time, played it back to back. So it's really early for me to put this on the top 10 list, but I really did enjoy it. And that is Caper Europe. This is my Kickstarter copy of Caper Europe. This is a two-player heist game, and right away, those two things I like. I like two-player games because they're easy to get to the table with my girlfriend, and I like heist games. I like the heist theme in general. I love heist movies, heist books, things like that. And in Caper Europe, you are using a tug-of-war mechanism in three different theaters, as you might say in Air, Land, and Sea. In this game, it's three different locations where you are trying to move a tug-of-war piece back and forth so that at the end of the game, at the end of 6 rounds, the tug-of-war piece is closer to you. The caper piece is closer to you. And you're doing that in alternating rounds where you are playing people on each of these locations to help you complete the heist, and items on other rounds to play on these different people. And every time you play a card, it might give you some coins. It might move that caper token a little bit. It might give you some endgame points. And there are different things that you can do based on your the region. So we played the London region and we played Paris. And there are a few different cards that end up in those decks depending on which region you play. I think Keymaster Games did a wonderful job with the components, and I like that it is a dueling game. It's very much a competitive head-to-head game. Here's those theaters I was talking about in Caper. I like that it's a dueling game, but there's very little that you're doing that's actively hurting the opponent, and yet there's still plenty of tension because you have this tug-of-war aspect. You're having to pay attention to a lot of the things that the opponent is doing. You're vying over grabbing tokens from the middle of the board. There are lots of things that give you that feeling of tension, that feeling of competing with another player without doing all that much to directly disrupt their plans. There's one type of card that does that, but even that isn't devastating when you play that type of card. I really enjoyed my play. I enjoyed it enough to play back-to-back, and I can definitely see this one being getting to the table in the future many, many times because I love heist, I love tug-of-war, I love the tension and the decision points this game provided, and I loved how easy it was to get through each round. Like each round, you're basically just picking a card, you're playing it, and then you're passing that hand of cards to your opponent. So you have this other form of interaction where you're interacting with the same hand of cards. So yeah, that's Watergate at number 10. Very fresh on my mind. Kind of similar to Caper is Watergate. Did I just say that in the wrong order? Caper's number 10. Watergate is number 9. Watergate is another tug-of-war game, but a very asymmetric game where... and it's been a while since I played it, but I do love the game. It's one that I haven't played very, very often. I haven't played it in a couple years now, but even just thinking about it gets me excited. If anyone ever came over with it and wanted to play, I would definitely want to play Watergate. Yeah, it's like all these. It's a two-player game where one player is the press trying to reveal what's going on behind the scenes in the Nixon administration, the presidency, and then the other side is kind of the cover-up that's trying to happen along the way. And the card play in this, in addition to the tug of war, is really, really clever. You're playing these cards that are manipulating a few different tokens on a track. And one of my favorite things I remember about Watergate is that if you can get a token far enough towards you, it locks into place. And I really like that in tug of war games, where if you can really push one certain token, even though you're giving up a bunch of other stuff that you could be doing, if you can push it just far enough, it locks into place and guarantees that you get whatever bonus comes with getting that token that far over to your side or on their side. There's a lot of stuff that goes into Watergate, and a lot of stuff that I don't remember for it because I haven't played it in a while. But I love the card playing it, I love the tug of war, and I love the asymmetry in the game. And again, while it is a dueling game, and you're trying to constantly outthink your opponent, you are not destroying the things or undoing the things that they're doing, except for moving the token. Like if they move the token one way and you move it back the other way, you are literally undoing the thing they did. But it's a dueling game where you're not destroying your opponent, which is generally the style of dueling game that I like. So that's Watergate at number 9. Speaking of destruction, though, in Stratego, this is the copy of Stratego I had as a kid. I still have it as an adult. This is a game where you're very much kind of destroying your opponents and wearing down their forces so that you can get to their flag. In Stratego, you like the twisted Stratego here. There's a fun 80s style picture on the back of the box here to show how it's set up. You have all these little pieces that are facing you, so your opponent can't see which pieces you have on the board until they tap on them with their piece and reveal what that piece is. And so then you have to show them, and the player with the lower number wins that little conflict. There's nothing else to the conflict. I love that. It's just whichever number is lower is more powerful, that player wins. A lot of these tokens have special abilities, like the 9s can move really far, and you can kind of... there's a lot of sneakiness in this game, though. So even though the 9s can move really far, you can move a 9 token one by one, making your opponent think that it's another number, and then suddenly you jet off in one direction and tap on something that they weren't expecting you to tap on. I love all that, but in addition to that, the setup of Stratego is a lot of fun because the setup is when you are hiding all these different tokens all over the map. You're hiding where your 1 is, where your spy is, where your flag is, where the bombs are. So you have this huge battle plan that you're going into the game with, that you know everything. You have all this information, but you have no idea about what you're facing on the other side of the table. It's just a really clever game to have that limited information in a dueling game, but to have it all be out there at the beginning of the game. Like there's nothing, once you set it up, there's no randomness at all that comes out of the game. It is completely, I would say, deterministic, but you don't know what's on the other side of the table. But I love that there's, like, you set the stage for what's going to happen, and then you decide how to actually play once like you are making every decision. You have full agency in this game other than not knowing what the other player has. Just a really, really clever dueling game, and that is Stratego at number 8. A game that isn't a dueling game at all is Patchwork. Patchwork is a lovely, pleasant 2-player game where you're making a quilt. I love the polyomino aspect of Patchwork. That's where you're using these Tetris-style pieces to try to fill in your quilt as much as possible. I love that aspect, but I also love the time track in Patchwork, because in Patchwork, the player whose turn it is the player who is further back on the time track. And all you do is move up on the time track based on the piece that you are taking. So you're choosing one of 3 different quilt pieces. You're choosing one of them, and then you're moving up on the track. Or if you can't take any piece or don't want to, you can just move up on the track and take some money, some buttons, so that you can afford other pieces in the future. And some of the pieces that you're putting on your quilt give you income. So every time you cross a certain line, you get buttons based on the pieces that you have on your quilt. So there's a nice sense of progression here, and there's a really nice sense of tension of, okay, do I spend a lot of time right now to get a piece that I really want? Or do I spend just a little bit of time here and there and get hopefully more pieces to fill in my quilt, but maybe not the exact shape that I need to fill in this area? It's such a clever little game, Patchwork, and I love that, like, in all these dueling games, I mentioned in a lot of dueling games where you are fighting your opponent, Patchwork isn't about fighting your opponent at all. It's so pleasant, it's so sweet, and I love it. And that's why it's my number 7 game on this list. I kind of wish there were more sweet games like it. And really, honestly, I have no cooperative games on this list at all. I do enjoy Fox and the Forest Duet, but it didn't make my list. And Codenames Duet, I enjoy that as well. But there aren't a lot of cooperative games built specifically for 2 players, and I kind of wish there were. At number 6, I have another tug-of-war-ish and I-cut-you-choose game, and that is Hanamikoji. Hanamikoji also has a very pleasant theme, like in Patchwork, where you were trying to basically vie for the attention or the influence of some geisha in Kyoto. in kind of feudal old world Japan. Not feudal, old world Japan. And so you have these geisha on the table, and you are playing specific cards, each card associated with a different geisha, to try to vie for their attention. And you look at the end of the round to see which player has the most cards associated with each of the geisha. And if there is a clear winner, opposed to a tie, you gain their attention. And you win the game instantly if you gain the attention of enough of the geisha or enough points value worth of the geisha. That's part of it. I love that tug of war, that tension. Who's gonna play the card at the right time to vie for their attention and to get that influence to sway their way at the end of the round. The other part of it, though, is the I cut you choose. There are only 4 actions that you're taking each round in Hanamikoji, and a few of them involve I cut you choose. For example, you take a few cards from your hand, and the opponent chooses 1, and you get the other 2. Or you take 4 cards from your hand, this is one of the actions, you divide them into 2 piles of 2, the opponent chooses 1, you get the cards on the other pile. I love choices like that in games, and it's so simple in Hanamikoji. Just 4 actions, you're taking just those 4 actions per round, and you have, again, you get to feel a little sneaky in this game. I think I'm finding that to be a trend. I love 2-player games where you get to feel a little sneaky, because you have this information about what you have at hand, about maybe cards that you've hidden, or a card that you've hidden, cards that you've trashed, and your opponent doesn't know that. So you have this information that they don't know, and you just get to feel sneaky and mischievous the whole time, and I love that about Hanamikoji. It is definitely one of my favorite 2-player games, at number 6 on this list. At number 5 is the first of several deck building games, and that is Crave. This is another game that is very new to me. It is essentially Star Realms, but with a very different theme. This is a game about hipster vampires and urban fantasy, like werewolves and centaurs, but all kind of hipsters, modern hipsters. Very interesting theme, and they do a great job of the theme with the keywords and what the different cards can do. The deck building in this game is great. You are acquiring more cards, putting them into your deck. Some of the cards you can even put into your opponent's deck. So you're putting some bad cards in your opponent's deck. And the cards that are available for you to buy are a common row from a big common deck of cards that either player can buy from, as well as a private row, an asymmetric deck of cards that is unique to you and only you can buy from that row of cards. So you're either playing the vampires or the vampire hunters. Each of you has your own unique starting deck and your own card row deck that goes in the middle of the table. And that to me is a really, really clever innovation in a deck building game. To add that level of asymmetry, that's not just an asymmetric starting deck, but also an asymmetric row of cards that only you can buy from that directly connect with the theme of your faction, either the vampire hunters or the vampires. I thought that was really, really clever, along with a number of other little clever touches in this game. This one caught me off guard. I was not expecting I knew nothing about it, basically. It's been on my shelf since I got it on Kickstarter a while ago. But I really enjoyed my first, 3 plays of it so far. And I can't wait to play it again, because it is just a really, really fun deck building game. And the theme of it really does make a difference for me. Even though I love the space theme of Star Realms, the theme and the art in this game is just fun. Like to see a hipster centaur show up in the game with really good art to show you what a hipster centaur would look like, just works for me. I like that a lot. And that is why I love Crave and why I'm putting it, even as a very new game to me, at number 5 on this list. I couldn't resist, though, putting Shards of Infinity at number 4, because this is another deck building game, another dueling deck building game that I really love. In both this game and Crave, you are trying to reduce your opponent's life to 0. So kind of classic Magic style of dueling game here. The twist in Shards of Infinity is the mastery system, which is amazing. In the mastery system in Shards of Infinity, there's this resource called Mastery that you can get, and it's basically like experience. You're getting more and more experience throughout the game as you gain mastery. And the mastery that you have, it does a couple things. One, if you reach 30 mastery, there's a card that you can play that gives you infinite damage, or deals infinite damage. So it's an insta-win card if you can focus on mastery and get up to 30. But even if you don't get up to 30, if you get up to, like, say, 5 or 10 or 15, there are cards in Shards of Infinity that say, okay, here's the standard ability, but if you have 10 mastery, here's this extra ability. So as you're improving in mastery over the course of the game, the cards that you're playing themselves also get better. That's awesome. In addition to all that, there are cards that do give you mastery, but as a default, every turn that you take, you can spend 1 resource. I think I'm getting that right. You can spend 1 resource, 1 crystal, to gain 1 mastery. You can do that once per turn. And I really like that because it opens up the decision space quite a bit in terms of the cards that you're choosing to buy. Because normally in a deck building game, if you have 5 crystals to spend and there's one 5 value card in the card row, you're probably going to go after that card. Maybe not always, but probably. Because you have 5 to spend, you're going to get that card. But in Shards of Infinity, Mastery is so useful in the game that having that once a turn you can spend 1 crystal to get 1 Mastery means that not only is that 5 value card appealing to you in the card row, but also every 4 value card in the card row is also appealing to you. Because do you get that card and gain a mastery, or do you just go for the 5 value card and get what is probably the best card in the card row? I really like the decision space. Everything revolving around mastery in this game, I think, is incredibly clever. And I highly recommend checking it out. We love the cooperative version in particular. I think it's a great dueling game. I mentioned there are no cooperative games on this list. There kind of are, because the expansion for Shards of Infinity lets you play 2-player cooperatively, and it plays really, really well against a series, kind of a mini campaign of bad guys. That's called the Shadow of Salvation expansion to Shards of Infinity. So yeah, there is actually a cooperative game on this list, and it's the expansion for this game at number 3, Shards of Infinity. At number 2, I skipped over 1. I totally did skip over 1. Okay, this is going to be... Well, okay, let's just change the order then. Let's say Shards is number 4, and we'll bump Hierarchy up to number 3, just for the sake of this list. Hierarchy is a tiny little game from Button Shy, but it is so clever. In Hierarchy, in fact, it's so easy to open up that I can show you what it looks like here. In Hierarchy, there are a series of cards in this game, and they're double-sided cards with the same thing on either side except for the color. So you have a purple king and you have the greenish king here. And you divide up these cards so that one player has a bunch of purple cards, the other player has a bunch of green cards. You know exactly, it's completely open information. You know exactly what's in your opponent's hand. And the whole point of the game is to play cards to a common row so that your opponent cannot play a card. And you do this in a variety of ways. So like so typically the standard rule is that you have to play a card with a higher value. But cards add a little twist on this. So like let's see if I can find an example of this. So the Imposter says, well, no, that's not a great example. The Surf says this counts as a 7 if it's the top card. So the Surf has a value of 3. So normally if you play a Surf, it would just be a 3. Very easy to play a higher number than a 3. But it says counts as a 7 while it's the top card. So if it's the most recent card played, you're forcing your opponent to play a card that is much higher than 7. And you know, because it's open information, you know exactly which cards your opponent has in hand. You know that they only have 1 card higher than 7, so you're forcing them to play that card at that time because of when you're playing the Surf. It has lots of little interactions from that in a game that's, I think it's only 13 cards, 12 or 13 cards. So simple. But I love that it's open information. There's really, like, there shouldn't be any sneakiness, but you still get to feel super sneaky about what you're doing in this game because you're trying to play the exact right card at the exact right time to kind of back your opponent into a corner. And you're doing so with these double-sided cards. I don't know. It's such a nice, tense 2-player game. So simple and easy to get to the table. And I'd love to see this mechanism used in other games because I think this is a really, really clever mechanism of just the idea of playing cards in a row so that your opponent can't play a card. You're trying to play the exact perfect card so your opponent can't play another card to that card row. Just really clever. That is Hierarchy now at number 3 on this list instead of number 4. At number 2, I have a game that I mentioned very briefly earlier, and that is Magic the Gathering. Here are a few cards that I have from a draft. Now, one of the things about Magic being on this list, and one of the reasons that I really love it, is that I love drafting Magic. I love getting together with a group of 6 to 8 friends and drafting Magic and then having 2-player duels against a variety of people at a draft. I love that. So it is definitely a 2-player game. You're playing one-on-one. But I love the experience of drafting with a lot more people. So it's one of these games where I like the involvement of more people, but when I sit down to actually play my deck in Magic in a draft, I like that I'm only playing against one player. But I love Magic for so many different reasons. Like I just love the variety of the cards. I love there's so many abilities that I love. Like I have a whole video about Magic abilities that I love. And whenever I play a new Magic set, like this one is the Forgotten Realms set that I'm holding up here. I love discovering the new cards and the new abilities they did for it. Like in this set they actually included D20s in this set, or included a need to use D20s, which was neat to see. I hadn't seen that before. I don't know. There's so much to love about Magic. There's so much to talk about it. I know people kind of get caught up, and I understand it with the collectible card game aspect of it. I don't play Magic that way. I play very casually. I play a draft. I buy a bunch of packs to get my friends together. We play a draft, and that is the satisfaction that I want to get from Magic. But yeah, I love the vast variety of abilities. I love the having the cards in your hand that you can play, but also building this tableau of creatures and artifacts and enchantments that you're using to take down your opponent in a variety of ways. And the timing of like which card to play when to attack with which card when to use each card. Those decisions I think are really, really juicy, especially when added with the extra decision point of which cards do you draft and which cards do you actually put into your deck after a draft when you're building your deck. I love all of it. And I get excited whenever a new set comes out. I'm super excited about the new Kamigawa set that's coming out. Kind of a futuristic return to a set that I loved from a long time ago. So yeah, Magic, number 2. I will play Magic my entire life if I have the choice in this draft format. It's my number 2 on this list. However, one game does take the cake, and that is what I think might have been my number 1 game when I made this list before, and that is Seven Wonders Duel. My love for this game continues to grow. It has so many things that I love. It has the tug of war. So you have this military track that you're trying to vie for military control. It has instant win conditions. So you can get an instant military victory. You can also get an instant science victory. And there's a standard points victory. I think it's really hard to pull off games with instant win conditions. But in a 2-player game, you can do that. Not easily, but you can do that. It works well in a 2-player game. And I love that. Even Magic even though it has the standard way of winning the game, there are also a variety of other ways you can beat your opponent. There's also the card drafting system in Seven Wonders Duel. My components are going to go everywhere as I flip this around, but you have this tableau of cards, and you're choosing one fully exposed card. So here I can choose either this card or that card. If I choose this card, then I know for sure my opponent has access to this card. So I have open information there. If I choose this card, we immediately flip these 2 face down cards, and you get your choice of 2 cards that I don't even know what they are. So you might get something awesome. I get more information when those cards flip, but you get the first choice of them. And that's compounded with certain cards in the game that let you take 2 turns in a row. And so, not cards, but they're Civ abilities, wonders, where if you complete that wonder, you can take 2 turns in a row, which can be really huge. Because if I take 2 turns in a row, I can get this card, I can flip over these cards right away and then pick one of them. That's great. But I love this whole card drafting system. It works so well here. And I love the sense of progression. You're building something. So you are fighting against your opponent. It is a dueling game, but you're not reducing them to 0 life unless you're going for military. You are building a giant tableau of awesomeness. And you get to see the sense of progression throughout the entire game. And this is, I think, one of the keys of these 2-player games and games in general. I get satisfaction from games, whether or not I win or lose, if I built something cool along the way. And Seven Wonders Duel, while being a tight, tense, dueling game with many great decision points, win or lose, I get to look at the cool thing that I built that game. Most of these games have some aspect of this, but some of these have stuff like Patchwork has that. I built a cool quilt in Patchwork. Crave, I built a cool deck, and I built hopefully a great tableau of vampires, vampire hunters that are staying out in play. In Caper, I've built a bunch of different people that are going on these heists, and I put a bunch of items on those people throughout the game, so I get to look at this giant tableau of people and items. That's kind of a common theme, even in Magic. You're creating this tableau of artifacts and enchantments and creatures. Common theme here of building something awesome, so whether or not I win or lose, I have enjoyed the process of playing. I have satisfaction from what I've built. And Seven Wonders Duel gives me that the most of all of these games. That's my take on 2-player games, the type of 2-player games that I gravitate towards, that I really, really enjoy. I'd love to hear your take on this. Games on this list that you enjoy as well, mechanisms that maybe I didn't mention here that you really love about them, or feel free to mention like your top 3 favorite 2-player only games, or games that are designed specifically to play for 2 players. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And I will link to my previous video about this, where you can see even more games in the comments, in the description, even more 2-player games that I also enjoy or have played, or some that I haven't played yet. There are many 2-player games that I haven't played yet and that I need to. Thanks. I look forward to the comments and the discussion about this. And those are my top 10 favorite 2-player only games. Take care.